Russian spy ship is now reportedly parked in international waters.
It's about 30 miles from a submarine base in Connecticut, but even closer to Montauk Point. While there's no indication the ship poses a direct threat to the U.S., lawmakers want to know what it's doing there.
They sure do. Long Island reporter Kristen Thorne is live with reaction. Kristen?
Diana and Sade, we've been here at Jones Beach for quite some time here. We've had a lot of people come up to the truck asking what we're doing here. We say we're here for the Russian spy ship, and a lot of people who've lived around this area for many years, they say, oh yeah, that used to happen all the time. But many, many years ago, this is a picture of the ship. It's designed to intercept intelligence. It has tons of antennas on top of it. It is now off the coast of Long Island, but it is not in U.S. territorial waters. Officials think its purpose is to intercept intelligence coming from the U.S. Navy submarine base in Groton, Connecticut. It's about 30 miles southeast of that base right now, and it's pretty much standing still at this point. Officials are calling it loitering, which is apparently common for a spy ship to do.
Right now, off the coast of Groton, Connecticut, 30 miles from the Groton Navy sub base, which is the oldest submarine base in America, there is a Russian spy ship, the Viktor Leonov, that is loitering, as was reported this morning.
As two retired Navy officers told the Chicago Tribune, a Russian vessel floating near U.S. waters isn't necessarily a security threat, but Connecticut's members of Congress are not happy about it. Russian jets buzzed a U.S. destroyer in the Baltic Sea last April and in the Black Sea last week. The country also recently deployed a cruise missile in an apparent treaty violation. Now, Democratic lawmakers want to cast the ship's appearance as part of a pattern of increased Russian aggression.
I think it's time now for all of us in Washington, D.C. to understand that Vladimir Putin, during the 5 years that he has been in power, again, has taken a posture that is completely destabilizing any sort of global system of peace and security.
A meeting at the White House that marks a dramatic development in the search for Middle East peace. There have always been doubts about whether Prime Minister Netanyahu really believes in a two-state solution. Now, upending the long-standing policy of the United States, President Trump says he's not wedded to it either.
So I'm looking at two-state and one state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one.
Those comments fundamentally change US policy and are at odds with UN Security Council resolutions and the agreed position of the entire international community. The Israeli Prime Minister clearly would not want a one-state solution where Israelis would soon be outnumbered by Palestinians. He made his vision clear.
In any peace agreement, Israel must retain the overriding security control over the entire area west of the Jordan River, because if we don't, we know what will happen.
On settlement building, which has continued with some speed in the 3 weeks since Trump became president, there was pushback to the Israeli leader.
I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made.
The relationship between the two men could not be closer. They were stressing family ties. The man, it seems, Trump has put in charge of finding peace between Israelis and Palestinians, his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, certainly has good relations with one of the parties in the conflict.
Can I reveal, Jared, how long we've known you? Well, he was never small. He was always big. He was always tall. But I've known the president and I've known his family and his team for a long time.
President Trump has effectively torn up the international community's two-state plan, often known as the roadmap. It means we're in uncharted territory. No one knows where he's going. US allies are worried. They say any alternative to two states, Israel living side by side with Palestine, is not a good option and could set back the path towards peace.
Protesters defy soldiers in Indian-administered Kashmir. They're demanding the Indian army release its grip on their country. This show of anger was in the region's largest city of Srinagar. Other protests were held in the districts of Pulwama and Kulgam.
This protest is because many people in Kulgam have been injured and many innocents have been killed.
The Indian Army recently raided villages hunting for separatist fighters. Several Indian soldiers and rebels have been killed in gunfights in the last few days. Civilians have also been killed.
The security forces came. When we went to the police station, my son had been tortured and had no bullet marks on his body. If he was killed in the crossfire, he would have had a wound or a bullet mark, but there were only torture marks.
India and Pakistan both claim the right to control parts of Kashmir. Rebels in Kashmir have been fighting for independence from India for nearly 30 years. Around 70,000 people have been killed since the conflict began. Hundreds of thousands of Indian troops are stationed in Kashmir. It's one of the most militarized parts of the world.
You can see how much injustice is done to Kashmiris. We appeal to the world to come forward and pressure India and Pakistan to resolve the Kashmir issue peacefully through dialogue.
Many fear a repeat of the widespread unrest which began in July following the killing of rebel leader Burhan Wani. Dozens of people died, hundreds were injured by birdshot fired by Indian troops. The economy was paralyzed. With the latest protests by separatists, there are growing crowds at the funerals of rebel fighters and a surge in gun battles involving Indian troops. Tension is high in Kashmir.
Next tonight here, the spillway emergency here in California. A new rainstorm just hours away now as workers race to repair critical damage near America's tallest dam. Families just returning home but told to be ready to get out fast. As we also learned, there were warnings about that spillway 12 years ago. ABC's Kayna Whitworth is on the scene tonight.
Tonight, a scramble to protect the nation's tallest dam. New storms and heavy rain just hours away. 1,200 tons of material now being brought in every hour to reinforce the Oroville Dam's emergency spillway, including giant bags of rocks. Officials say the lake level's falling 20 feet since Sunday.
This is how the release of all of that water is affecting people some 30 miles downstream. They're covered in several feet of water.
ABC News Learning environmental groups warned state officials about potential erosion issues with that emergency spillway more than a decade ago. This as families like Jolene Wilson's finally returning home.
I'm just hoping we don't have to leave again.
David, the temporary fixes to this main spillway and the emergency spillway will be challenged tonight as storms move in. The permanent fixes they have planned could cost as much as $200 million.
Well, California state water officials now say they've drained enough water from the Oroville Reservoir, so it should be able to handle more rain from storms expected tonight and tomorrow night as well. The overflow on Sunday forced the evacuation of nearly 200,000 people downstream, and the situation highlights our nation's aging infrastructure. There are more than 90,000 dams across the country, and nearly 1 in 5 of those dams is considered high hazard and lack any emergency action plans.
So just how much rain is expected in Northern California? Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli from our affiliate WPEC in West Palm Beach, Florida, is tracking the storms advancing towards the West Coast. So Jeff, how much rainfall is expected from these storms?
A lot, and it's going to happen really over the course of the next week. We're expecting 3 storms. Storm number 1 is going to come on shore later tonight and during the day tomorrow. That's actually the weakest one. A much stronger and more moisture-laden storm is going to move through not just Northern California, but also Southern California on Friday. We get a little break here Saturday, but then later on Sunday into Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, heavy rain likely across California. Look at how much rain we're expecting to see. As you'll see over the course of the next 7 days or so, look at this. The red expands, the yellow expands. Those are areas that are 7-8 inches of rain over the next 7 days. And you know that's going to be a boatload of snow in the mountains. Some places in the mountains are likely to see 4+ feet of snow.
America's bridges need work. That's the gist of a list of structurally deficient bridges recently released by the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. The group used Transportation Department data to identify 55,710 bridges across the country that need attention, even if they aren't just about to collapse. These include such well-known structures as New York's Brooklyn Bridge and the Arlington Memorial Bridge in Washington, D.C. Iowa had the highest number of deficient bridges with 4,968. The ARTBA's Allison Primo Black said America's highway network network is outdated, overused, underfunded, and in desperate need of modernization. President Trump has proposed a $1 trillion infrastructure plan, but how it would work is unclear. He and his Transportation Secretary Elaine Chao have expressed a preference for encouraging private investment.
It's official. India could soon have the deadliest air pollution in the world. Air pollution in India has been linked to nearly 1.1 million premature deaths per year. Right now, that's roughly the same as China, but it probably won't stay that way. In the past 5 years, government regulation in China has helped level off the number of deaths and even started a downward trend. But India's stats don't look as great. From 2010 to 2015, the number of premature deaths from air pollution increased from almost 960,000 to more than 1 million. That's because of weak government regulation, population growth, and a heavy reliance on coal for energy. Still, India isn't the only place with a pollution problem. In the Western world, Mexico City, London, and Paris have had public health concerns too. And The Guardian found in at least 15 cities across the world, the danger of 30 minutes of outdoor cycling outweighs the benefits of exercise altogether.
Climate change is causing the number of penguins living in Antarctica to slowly fade out. Sean Ferry, a scientist who lives in Antarctica and is called the Birdman, said, "We're counting the penguins every year. These local islands where we've been censusing for it's 43 years now have declined by about 85%. The numbers on this island at their peak were about 9,000, and this year it was about 1,200. Penguins are dying out because sea ice is necessary to their survival. Climate change is melting it away."
With China being the world's second largest poultry consumer, markets like this one have suddenly become a danger to public health, with the increasing number of avian flu infections and fatalities. To stem the flow of avian flu, many live poultry markets have been forced to close. In China's southern city of Guangzhou, the avian flu virus has been detected in all its poultry markets, forcing them to close for 13 days.
Closing poultry markets for 3 days has efficiently reduced the spread of the H7N9 virus. Our research suggests the contamination levels have been reduced by 60%, which has an obvious effect.
While markets have been shut down before, the Disease Control Center found that their closure can only slow the spread of the virus temporarily. After the markets reopen, the virus will continue its spread. To exacerbate the problem, the H7N9 virus usually spreads more quickly and more virulently in the warmer weather of the upcoming spring season. To keep Guangzhou safe, authorities have imposed even stricter requirements.
To put it simply, all poultry-related transactions are prohibited, except for those involving frozen poultry products.
The spread of infection occurs for several reasons, such as many different people handling poultry products and people's weak immune systems. Authorities advise everybody to ensure that all food is well boiled.
The avian flu virus is quite fragile and will lose activity if exposed to temperatures of over 100 degrees Celsius for at least 2 minutes. Poultry is safe to eat when it is well boiled.
Besides Guangdong, other provinces like Anhui have chosen to close poultry markets as well. In Taiwan, thousands of ducks have been slaughtered in order to curb the spread of the virus. Authorities hope measures like these will see a reduction in the number of reported cases of avian flu.
City officials in New York have called for a renewed effort to cull the city's rodent population after diseased rat urine has killed at least one person and sickened 2 others in an outbreak of a rarely seen infection. According to the health department Tuesday, the outbreak of leptospirosis began in December, and all 3 cases were traced to a single block area of the Bronx, New York's northernmost borough. Leptospirosis, while treatable with antibiotics, is a potentially deadly bacterial infection spread by rodents and certain other animals that can cause fever, vomiting, and kidney damage. While the department did not identify the patients, nor would they comment on exactly how the 3 people were exposed to the infected rat urine, typically humans get infected through contact with tainted water.
The results of a new study show that since 1800, the rate at which invasive species have been reported worldwide has skyrocketed, with nearly 40% of them discovered since 1970. Invasive species not only damage crops, clog rivers, and cost farmers and homeowners billions of dollars annually, they also are linked to the decline of nearly 4 out of 10 endangered or threatened species in the U.S. Conservationists hope that improving awareness of the threats of invasive species, coupled with improved global biosecurity, will continue to slow the harmful spread of non-native species. Study leader Hanno Siebens, an ecologist at the Seckenberg Biodiversity and Climate Research Center in Frankfurt, Germany, warns that not all non-native or alien species are problematic, only those that negatively affect the environment, which are known as invasive.
A new study suggests that medical marijuana carries infectious bacteria and fungi that can pose a life-threatening risk to cancer patients who use pot to help deal with the side effects of chemotherapy. The study began after the death of a man using medical marijuana to deal with the side effects of cancer treatment. His death is believed to have been caused by a fungus from his marijuana. Researchers studied 20 different samples of marijuana from Northern California. Lead researcher Dr. George Thompson III said that the germs found on the pot wouldn't harm an average pot user, but could be potentially fatal to people whose immune systems have been suppressed.
The first transgender doll to ever hit the market is revealed. The doll features no obvious gender identifiers, but is modeled after transgender teen Jazz Jennings from the TLC series I Am Jazz. 16-year-old Jennings revealed a photo of the doll on her Facebook page February 10th, thanking Tonner Doll Company, quote, for being so progressive. Founder Robert Tonner says he has been a fan of Jennings since 2007, when she appeared on an episode of 2020, telling Barbara Walters she was a girl at just 6 years old. Tonner told the Associated Press, quote, Jazz stands for everything I respect from a human nature point of view. She's incredibly brave, intelligent, warm-hearted, and creative. Jazz's TV show shares her experiences as a transgender teen while undergoing hormone treatment. The doll will debut at the New York Toy Fair on February 18th and will sell for $89.99 when it hits store shelves in July. A transgender model graces the cover of Vogue Paris for the first time. Other magazines have had trans people on their covers before, but this is a first for Vogue Paris, a renowned publication running since the 1920s. The March cover features Brazilian Valentina Sampaio, who has more than 36,000 followers on Instagram. Editor Emmanuelle Alt wrote in her editorial column, quote, trans people, the ultimate symbol of a rejection of conformity, are icons that Vogue supports and chooses to celebrate. She goes on to say, quote, but only when a transgender person poses on the front cover of a fashion magazine and it is no longer necessary to write an editorial on the subject will we know that the battle is won. Sampaio was on the cover of Elle magazine Brazil last year and has worked for L'Oréal Paris. The March issue of Vogue Paris hits newsstands February 23rd.
A panel of scientists releases a report supporting eventual genetic engineering in human embryos. The panel, formed by the National Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Medicine, determined that it will be necessary to allow some gene editing under tight restrictions. The subject has long been taboo in the scientific community. There are concerns the practice will exaggerate social inequality and could create unintended genetic diseases. In the report released February 14th, the panel endorsed gene editing only to prevent babies from being born with serious diseases and disabilities. Even then, the scientists say, it must be tracked through multiple generations in order to ensure there are no unintended genetic side effects. The panel is also concerned that an all-out ban would be useless if other countries pursue genetic modification unregulated. They hope the United States will set a good example by putting tight regulations in place. Elon Musk says humans must merge with machinery in order to stay relevant in a world of increasingly advanced artificial intelligence. Speaking at the World Government Summit in Dubai, the Tesla and SpaceX CEO said humans are limited by the speed at which they transmit data. Musk proposed a high bandwidth connection to the human brain would allow us to transmit digital info faster than our current fastest method, typing. Musk says an artificial general intelligence has the potential to make humans irrelevant. He sees integration with technology as a necessary step in order to avoid this. He also cautioned governments to monitor AI development and not let it get out of hand. Musk expressed concerns about the future of AI, such as the more immediate problem of self-driving cars replacing driving jobs. He believes this would have the potential to eliminate 15% of jobs worldwide.
The whir of robots on this car assembly line is dizzying. In almost every facet of your life, robots could soon change the way you work and play. Dexterous, increasingly intelligent.
It is a critical time
for humanity. We've got the possibility of artificial intelligent machines doing their own things that are not good for humans, and even treating humans as some sort of subspecies.
This new exhibit at London Science Centre documents 500 years of robots. From some of the original movie robots, who only played the part, to modern interactive robots like Pepper, artificially intelligent. For decades, robots have stirred our imaginations and in some cases our fears. The autonomous machines from the movie Terminator, cast in a post-apocalyptic future, presented a fictional scenario where humans had become subservient to robots. And today it's not so far-fetched. The military has made autonomous robots, including drones, submarine hunting ships, gun platforms, that can not only identify targets, but if allowed, can one day decide when to squeeze the trigger and kill with or without human oversight. There's already a lot of discussion about rules for robots, but very little agreement. For instance, the European Union has actually discussed a mandatory insurance scheme for robots in case one of them goes haywire, and an ethical code of conduct for robot designers. Robots will eventually displace huge numbers of workers. It's already started in China. What are the legal questions?
What do you do when machines behave in ways that couldn't have been predicted or that their manufacturers didn't intend? What do you do if a self-trading algorithm in the city starts insider trading?
So far, no one has the answers to questions about robots that are coming at society like a freight train. Will we play together or compete with one another? It could be shattering for society. At the very least, it will be an uneasy collaboration between humans and robots.
On Wednesday, Pope Francis appeared to back Native Americans seeking to halt part of the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Pope said indigenous cultures have a right to defend their ancestral relationship to the earth. The Latin American Pope has often strongly defended indigenous rights since his election in 2013. He made his comments on protection of native lands to representatives of tribes attending the Indigenous Peoples Forum in Rome. While he did not name the pipeline, he used strong and clear language applicable to the conflict. He said development had to be reconciled with the protection of the particular characteristics of indigenous peoples and their territories.